we're going to be talking about Kiro powers. So I'm doing the He-Man power move, similar for you. How many of you, quick show of your hands, how many people here have used Kiro? All right, cool. Handful. How many people have heard of Kiro? Yeah, I think we did our job. When I had a session day one, and I asked the audience, and it was like 30%, and like by day 4 now, it's everyone knows about Kiro. So we're hoping that a lot more of you try Kiro over, like once you get back to over the holidays actually, and hope all of you took advantage of the 1,000 free credits you can get at the Kiro haunted house back at the Venetian. So today we're going to talk about powers. This is a feature that we launched just yesterday morning. I will get into what it is and what problem it solves, but here's the rough agenda. We'll start with the general problem that we were trying to solve with powers, how we're going about solving it, and then I'll do a live demo, so hopefully the demo gods are with me. I totally forgot. I forgot to introduce, we have 2 partners here. I have Harry Maurer, who's the CTO of Postman, and then Tyler Schukert, who's a DevRel engineer at Supabase. And they're going to talk about their use cases, about how they're using powers to really streamline the onboarding for API development and backend development. Now, I'm sure you've seen a variant of this slide over the last 4 days over 1,000 times. AI has transformed software dev. What started with inline code suggestions that would give you a function has now evolved to full-blown agents that are able to build large features in your code base. But one of the problems is that AI agents are still generalists, jack of all trades, if you will. So every time you go to do something specific, like if you're working on a front end or you're working on an API or a back end, there's a lot of massaging you have to do with the agent, providing the agent a lot of context to get the right outcome you want. For specialized tasks, agents do face challenges. The first one, really, is that software is evolving every day. Every day there's a new SDK. Every day there's like a new tool or technology that's launched. The models that power the agents are often trained on data that isn't up to date. So if you want to work with an SDK, like the Strands TypeScript SDK for agent development came out at reInvent, you're going to have to figure out how to get the model or the agent to build Strand stuff. You could link it to the docs, but it's just going to go ahead and decide what it wants to do. And the second problem is that even when the agent does know about, or even when the agent does know about a particular piece of technology or a framework, it can miss steps and it can not follow. It doesn't really have an onboarding manual for a technology. MCP was built to solve that problem. How many of you are familiar with MCP? Okay, so MCP is a model context provider. It's a convention that was built so that you could share. So it allowed for agents an extensible model when working with agents. So for example, both our partners here today, Postman and Supabase, have MCP servers. The MCP servers really talk to their APIs, so they're able to do things like list projects, update tables, create collections. But the MCP alone is also not enough. The problem that happens with agents is as you add more and more MCPs to your agent, the agent gets overwhelmed with context. And a real problem that's emerged in the industry as a whole is context rot, that as more tools get added and are made available to the agent, performance degrades, and quality output declines. Additionally, even with the MCP server in hand, there's often guidance and onboarding instructions that are completely missed, that the agent just does not follow. So what you often need to pair is almost a combination of MCP and context. Now, a lot of solutions have popped up even beyond MCP in the market now. You have Claude Skills. They recently launched, Anthropic recently launched, it's called Tool Search Tool, kind of a weird name, that allows you to like dynamically discover tools. You have cursor rules, you have agents.md, but there are sub-agents. But there are all different ways to get to the same thing. And just if you go look online in the forums and on Reddit, people are very confused. Like, what do I use? When do I use what? Like, and there are tons of YouTube videos about MCP versus skills versus sub-agents. And they all kind of do, the end goal is really you want to generate code to match your intent. And so we really took a step back with Powers, and we thought about how do we, one, get the agent to learn something specialized, and two, do it in a way where it doesn't actually overwhelm the agent with context. And that's kind of why we launched Kiro Powers. So what Kiro Powers do is that they're a bundle that give the agent extensible, specialized capabilities. Right? So it really makes your Kiro agent extensible, so you can add a power, and then the agent knows about that power. And when you take on a task that is related to the power, the agent can just automatically discover it. The unique thing here is that as you add these powers, they're not going to overwhelm your agent with context, because the agent is getting very minimal information about the specific technology. So in this case, if we add Postman and Supabase, the agent just knows about that it has these Postman capabilities available. And if you ask questions about APIs, it'll automatically say, hey, I need to use the Postman power, and it'll actually start going ahead and following the instructions in the power. What the power really contains, and I'll show this in the demo, is a combination of, it's got front matter and markdown. So there's a power.md file that defines basically onboarding instructions and a workflow for the agent to follow. And that's the only required piece of information. But what you can also do is combine that with MCP tools to really make it powerful. So Powers is the only available solution out there right now that combines steering and MCP in one bucket. And what we do is we have a template really for the Power MD that allows you to do things on install and on activation, allow you to install hooks and steering files, which I'll kind of show you in the demo. We've partnered with partners, so we've got a curated set of partners. Yeah, we've partnered with partners across the life cycle of application development. So from UI development with Figma, to API development with Postman, to backend development with Supabase and Neon, to payments with Stripe. And it's not just curated powers. We've built it in a way so anyone can build a power. So in fact, in my demo, what I'm going to do today is start with one of the curated powers and then actually live build a power and bring it into my project. What that allows is really the community to build a whole variety of powers. Just yesterday, at my last session, I had 3 individuals come up to me and say, hey, I've got this really cool use case for a power. They were doing Java upgrades, and apparently that's really hard. I'm not a Java developer. We already have, there's multiple repos. Someone created a Kiro Powers repo overnight, and they've got a playwright power, right? So it's really going to open up an extensible model of working with Kiro, because trust me, you're going to have a power for that. And what we've done is our UX is also very simple. So within the Kiro interface, so Kiro, the IDE interface, we have a new powers pane where you just click on the power. It loads our curated powers, and you can just one-click install it. And you see this very shortly. And as I called out, even from that same interface, you can build your own power or import a power. So if you got a public GitHub URL, someone on the internet shared this power being like, hey, this is a super cool playwright power I built. You can just add that, and your agent will have awareness of that. The second use case is phase 1 of our journey towards more governance for teams around powers. But it alone will already enable teams. So let's say you have a team, and you define coding conventions, you define rules around how you work with particular technology, you can define that in a repository with powers, and you can actually import the power from a folder. So each developer can clone the repository to their individual environments and actually import powers. We're going to make that a lot better in the future. And finally, this kind of organically came up as we were working with partners, because every partner was saying, hey, like now I've got to maintain like these unique files for every provider, because as we all know, there's a lot of agentic tools out there. And what we wanted to do was not build something that's proprietary in nature. So hopefully, the way we built this under the hood is that Powers is itself an MCP server. So hopefully once we make this public, we didn't make this public immediately, but you can use Powers with Klein, the Kiro CLI, Cursor, maybe even Cloud Code. And hopefully once we do that, Harry and Tyler here will be able to keep that one file, and actually, when working with multiple providers, they can just provide that bundle as context. And so I think I've spoken enough about Powers here, so let me actually go ahead and switch to a live demo. Since there were many people in the audience who have not actually used Kiro, let me give you a quick tour of the interface. So Kiro is an IDE, fork of CodeOSS. And what we really have is this Kiro pane here has 4 features that we launched with. So the application that I'm showing you today is an application I built in my last 2 demos. It's a job seekers app. So the pitch here, and my plan is after this, I'm going to quit my job and go build the next billion-dollar unicorn. But the pitch here is that people looking for jobs, often like there's tools and there's enough information available to practice questions, but there isn't really a way to practice like tone and style and diction and how you're answering something. So we live built this app in a 1-hour session, where essentially the flow is like a user starts an interview, you voice record the answer, we transcripted the answer, and then after you go through the interview, we send the results to an AI Claude SDK that then generates a qualitative and quantitative score of how you did. And we use specs. So if you've not attended any of the sessions on Kiro, specs is the unique feature that we added to the space. It gives a structured approach to building with AI, because you can really plan effectively before you go and implement work. So to give you can everyone see the interface okay? I'll just make it a little bigger. Oops, sorry. To give you an overview of the interface, so you start with a prompt, and we break that prompt into user stories and acceptance criteria that actually define like your requirements. So in this case, you see things like as a job seeker, I want to answer interview questions using voice recording so that I can practice speaking. Then we switch to a design. And the design really, like if you look at it, it starts with an architecture diagram. So there's a React application, and it's got all the components and interfaces within it. And then you get to a task list. And the task list includes optional tasks and required tasks that you can then execute. Now this entire flow, we did this flow in a whole session where we built this application, and I'll do a quick demo of the application as well. As you can start with an interview, and agentic development involves working with MCPs, context, and tools. It's a hard problem to solve, which is why we launched Powers. Powers was a technical problem we solved recently. We did this in a way where we used the concept of progressive disclosure to make the agent effective. I researched things on the internet and using social media. And then what this app does is that it then sends this data over, it transcribes that data and sends it over the web to Claude, to a model. The model analyzes the results and gives me a score. Looks like I'm not ready to get get a job. It's a lot of work I got to do, and gives you qualitative feedback as well. Cool. So that was a quick tour of the application. I didn't really talk about the other features, but we have hooks. Hooks are lifecycle events, so they actually like watch the IDE for different events like file save, file create. We're adding more like on agent chat complete, and you can actually do things. You can do actions, so you can ask the agent to do something, or you can run commands. It's kind of an enforcer, if you will, when you're working with agents. And then as we talked about, MCP and steering are like ways to guide the agent, to give the agent rules to follow when they build things. It's a very quick overview of just the core Kiro interface. Now, what we launched with powers is this new tab here. So adding a power here is really easy. So what I'm going to do in this demo is that I have this interface here that I built. This was the interface I built just in my last session. But I also have a Figma file that, let's say, my designer built. And this kind of looks much nicer than what you just saw, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and get Kiro to take this. I'm going to install the Figma power and try and have Kiro to go and implement this. So let's actually go ahead and install the Figma power. All right. So that was installed, and if you want to take a look at what a power looks like, the power itself is it's a markdown file with the power.md. Let me open the front matter because it's the markdown version because it's easier to understand. So this is what front matter looks like, right? And as you can see, we have keywords related to Figma like UI, design, code, layout that help the agent decipher when it should actually invoke this power. And with this power, there's like a workflow defined. Execute this file to generate the right context for Figma. And so it's going to create something called a system design rule, and then also a hook, which we can watch. And then with the power, there's an mcp.json. So this is the MCP configuration. So Figma has an MCP server, and so you can add one or more MCPs within a power. But working with Figma, they have one MCP. So now what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm actually going to say try power and see what happens. So as you can see, it activated the Figma power and tells you what you can do with the Figma power. And the first thing it's doing this thing called, it's saying it needs to create design system rules. Now, create design system rules is a tool in the MCP for Figma, but if you were to just download the Figma MCP and start working with it, it wouldn't automatically get invoked. In fact, there's documentation embedded in some Figma link which says, copy this prompt, paste it in, and generate this file. What this file does is it actually gives the agent really good context on how to. It gives Figma and the agent really good context about what the specific project setup, what the specific project has in terms of a design system. So this should generate shortly, but it'll have things like what is the CSS styling, what's the design tokens, what are layout rules, so colors, right? These are all things that Figma finds very useful, and the agent also finds very useful when it generates code. Now, so it created the steering file, and it's got the steering file with this inclusion mode as always. So what this means is now I have this steering file included right here. That every time the agent runs, it'll use this file as context, because Figma really thinks that this is an important file for the agent to have access to. And second, it created something called this is slightly more contextual to an audience that's familiar with Figma, but it created a hook called Figma component code connect. Now what that does is that Figma has this concept of components. In your UI, you have concept of components, and you can really map the two together. So the way this hook runs is that it says that on every, it should be in every file create, it'll basically try and map the component to the Figma version of the component. So that's really what you can get with this power. So right out of the box, you get an onboarding experience that's fully guided. That isn't just, okay, go install an MCP server from the docs and figure out how to work with it. And as a developer, there's nothing more important than staying in the flow. Right. So, all right, so it's saying, okay, great, my Figma power is now up and ready to use. And it's giving me some examples again. So this is all very useful because it's almost like documentation that you'd have to follow, but without leaving your editor. Now, if I were to go to Figma, Figma has this feature called Dev Mode right here, which allows me to select a component, and I can just copy this example prompt that says implement this design from Figma. And then I go in here, and I'm going to just go ahead and paste that. And let's see what the agent does. Hopefully this works. Yep, so it's trying to get this tool from Figma. I'm just going to go ahead and auto-approve this tool, so it never asks me for permission again. Okay, great. Okay, so now it's connected to the Figma. I'd fetched that frame, and what you can see, it says, I've found this topic. Let me convert this design to match your project CSS approach. So it's taking like the Figma context, and it's got context because it includes that design context file at the beginning. It is going to say, oh wow, like now I can understand what you've got in your project and what Figma has, and it's now going to go ahead and create a new enhanced topic card component. Let's see how it does. So the funny thing here is like I did this like 2 times before the demo, and both times the results were slightly different, and that is just the nature of working with AI systems right now. But they were close enough. So I'm hoping this version is also going to be pretty good. So this is the other cool thing we've launched with Kiro in the last couple of months. When we first launched Kiro, the agent would have a lot more errors in the actual interface, and it requires some back and forth to fix them. But we launched diagnostics tool support, which actually can find like linting errors, and we launched support for like dev servers, so it can read like compile time errors, and the agent just like auto recovers itself. So I was able to do all my demos this reInvent. This is my 4th session without the agent really making mistakes, which has been super cool. And now I'm going to jinx myself for sure. While this is happening, let me just show you how easy it is to create a power. So I have this power that I've built. I really like, so Chrome has a DevTools server that what it lets you do is it actually will run Chrome and be able to do things like click on components, test for responsiveness, check make hover effects. It can do a lot. So I've set up this Chrome DevTools power, and it's essentially got 2 files. It's got a power.md file with like instructions for what to do, and an MCP JSON file. Now, for me to add this to Kiro, it's going to be super easy. I would just go into Kiro here, in the say add custom power, import a power from a folder. And there, now I have a Chrome DevTools UI testing power available to me as well. Okay, so it implemented something. Let's see how it did, what it did. All right. Oh, not bad. It's pretty good. And let's actually now go ahead and see if like I can invoke the Chrome DevTools power. Okay. Now run Chrome DevTools to make sure everything is okay. Okay, so it's running a background power. And let's see if it, okay, great. Oh, did I have my MCP on? Oh, I cheated a little bit. I unfortunately had not disabled the actual MCP server, but that's fine. So what this is going to do now is that you see how it opened its own instance, and now check out what it's going to do. It's going to see, so DevServe is running. Now the new design is rendering great. Let me check the console for any errors. So look at the runtime, look at the actual console runtime, see if the errors, okay, no errors. Now let me test the hover effects. And so it's going to actually like hover on the UI component. I believe the UI component has some hover states to see if the hover works. And now it's doing, okay, how is this going to work on a mobile device? It's going to resize the page. And yeah, so I think you get the gist of it. So the powers really give you the agent ability, like a toolkit of abilities, a Swiss Army knife of abilities, without overwhelming it with context. And I kind of walked you through the Figma use case. I'm going to ask Harry to come on and
Sure.
talk about Postman.
Awesome. Where I'm at here. Hey everybody, my name's Harry Maurer. I'm the field CTO at Postman, and in my role, I help our largest customers improve their overall software development process. How many of you are familiar with Postman? How many of you used Postman? Yeah, there you go. So for those that haven't, Postman is the most widely used tool to test and design and to manage your APIs. We're used by over 40 million developers, over 500,000 organizations have adopted us. And we've become one of those indispensable tools in the developer toolkit, sort of like Git and VS Code, strong coffee, and noise-canceling headphones, right? We're part of the tool chest that every developer typically uses. For those that aren't familiar with me, I had a long history in developer tools. I spent a long time at Microsoft in developer tools. I ran dev tools for Red Hat for a long time. I actually worked on dev tools at AWS. And now I'm here at Postman, and I've never been more excited about software development. I feel like my entire 20-plus some year career has led to this point where my code is finally able to write my code, right? And it's just awesome how much you can get done in just a short amount of time with these tools. But for as powerful as they are, they still need a lot of guidance, right? So as Nikhil was saying, they're very much generalists, and they need a lot of guidance and knowledge to help them do the job in the way that you want them to do it, right? So you got to tell them what kind of framework to use and what kind of language to use, and importantly for Postman, which APIs you want to use to build in your application. And this is where we see Postman continuing to play an indispensable role, right? As I mentioned, millions of developers use Postman to collaborate and build their APIs and test them and manage them. And increasingly, those developers are being joined by countless numbers of agents, right? So agents now are wanting to do the same thing that developers did. They want to test their APIs. They want to share the APIs. And they want to do that not only with other developers, but with other agents as well. And today, we enable that through our Postman MCP server. So there's an MCP server out there today that you can use within whichever coding agent or assistant that supports MCP that you want to use. But there's some limitations to it, and this is why we're so excited to be partnering with the Kiro team, right? For instance, we want to provide a lot of capabilities to those MCP servers. So we have over 100 tools, but most of them really can't deal with that many tools, right? So we have a slimmed down version which only has 40 tools, which can also sometimes overwhelm them, right? So one of the things we're really excited about in Kiro is the ability for that to automatically load after we install the MCP server, right? And the other thing that we usually stumble upon is when someone goes to use our MCP server, we're relying on them to actually write the system prompts to make it more effective, right? And so now with Kiro, we have these steering files, and we can package all this up into a power that makes our MCP server much more powerful for the agent to use. And so rather than me talking about it, I want to give you a quick demo. I am not as fearless as Nikhil, so I recorded mine. Let's see if we can get the video going. So I've got a sample application. It's a personal finance application. It's interesting, me and Tyler both started working on the same thing. It's pretty robust. It's got a lot of the same things that you would expect to have in a large enterprise scale application. It's got a core API, it's got an SDK, it's got a CLI. And I use Postman to help manage all of the different versions and share those APIs with my team. So in my pipelines, I automatically generate a collection and a spec for each version. And I do that as part of my pipeline process. But when I want to build an API that I can collaborate on, one that's still in development, I also want to create a collection and be able to share that with my other development teams. So through the new Kiro power, I can do that right inside my IDE. Here's a sample prompt I put together. I'm asking Kiro to create a collection based off a endpoint within my API for just reporting. And one of the things that we tell in the steering file is we tell Kiro to keep a postman.json file for all of the metadata about the workspace and the collection and the user information that we use. And we build upon that as we go, because it's going to help some of our more advanced features like the hooks work later on. So as Kiro goes through the process here, it's going to use my API key to connect to Postman. It's going to read my code, understand the endpoints that I need to make, and then it automatically creates this collection inside of my workspace that now I can share with my team, right? So it's got everything that it needs here, and you should see that here. So there's my new endpoint in development. This is pretty cool, but if someone went to go to use this, it wouldn't really work. It would tell them what the endpoint was supposed to look like, but there's no real way to test this. And so one of the cool features inside of Postman is the ability to create mock servers and environments for APIs that aren't quite finished yet, right? So I can mock out this environment. I can share that with the team who needs it downstream while I'm continuing to develop the implementation. And so I can do that now directly inside of Kiro instead of having to do that inside of Postman. I don't ever have to leave my IDE. So another prompt I tell Kiro, hey, let's take that collection you just built, the one you just saved inside of that JSON file, and now let's build a mock environment and server for that so that we can test these directly. We can test these without the implementation being completed. So it's going to go through the process here of doing that. And again, as it does this, it keeps adding to that metadata. And the reason it can do that is because we told it to do that in the steering file, right? If I had to rely on the end user to do that, I couldn't rely on you all to do that, right? So we automatically package that up for you to do that. So the mock server was automatically created. And again, the only thing I had to tell Kiro to do was look at my code, right? I didn't have to write a spec. I didn't have to do anything like that. I said, investigate, look at my code, create this collection. Once you create the collection, now you know everything about that. Go create this virtual environment inside of Postman, which has a mock server and all the environment variables that I need. And now I can actually go and test this and get test data back to be able to run that collection, right? And as I said, this is really great because now I don't have to, the other team, if I'm a downstream team, I don't have to wait on me to finish it. And I can also just start to test that right here inside of Kiro. So I want to make sure it works for the other team. Now, why this is cool and why I wanted to show this is a standard test that we're going to run, not only just to validate the collection worked and the mock environment worked, but it's also going to be called every time I make a change to the source code because I automatically packaged a Kiro hook inside of it. So one of the things that you would do as you're developing your APIs, you want to go back and test it and make sure everything works. So now automatically when I change the source code and save it, Kiro knows that because there's a hook inside of there and it's going to run that same collection in that mock environment that we created and make sure everything still works, right? So now we've got this closed loop system. So this is one small example. Like I said, we have over 100 tools inside of our MCP server. You can do everything from creating collections and workspaces and sharing them and also generating other code. So we're really interested and excited to see what y'all are going to do with it. It's available today. You can go install it from the Kiro marketplace. And we also have a Discord server. We'd love to get your feedback. So if you could take the time to join, we'd love to hear it. And hopefully you'll get a lot of value out of it. So thank you. Tyler, let's see your personal finance app.
Thanks, Harry.
Yep. Cool.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tyler, and I'm a dev role at Superbase. And today, I'm going to talk to you about Superbase and the Kiro power that we're launching. For those who don't know what Superbase is a backend platform loved by many developers across the world. We have 5 million developers shipping over 90,000 databases every single day. And we have shipped in total 60 million databases today. Earlier this year, we shipped our MCP server. The Superbase MCP server includes numerous tools for building applications on top of Superbase. You can do things like list out tables, manage your database migrations, manage your storage bucket, really anything that you can do within the Superbase platform. This MCP server forms the backbone of our Kiro power. And I am happy to announce the Kiro power for Superbase. We are announcing 2 Kiro powers from Superbase. One, to work with your local Superbase database, and another, to work with a hosted Superbase database, so that you can start locally and deploy your Superbase database to your cloud. It uses a Superbase MCP and the Superbase CLI to build, manage, debug, and scale your application with the help from an LLM. Not just having access to these tools, but the Superbase Kiro powers understands the best practices of how to use Superbase and how to use a Postgres database. So you don't have to be a database expert in order to get building on a Postgres database. Now let's see it in action. It's all good. So I'm going to start with a plain Vite app. I'm going to go ahead and install the Superbase local Kiro power. I'm going to hit install and hit try power, and off we go. We're going to start up by the onboarding flow, and it's going to check things like whether I have Docker running, whether I have the Superbase CLI installed, and whether I have initialized the Superbase project within the working directory. Now, I hadn't initialized Superbase in here, so it went ahead and initialized Superbase for me. And then now it's fetching the Superbase credentials and creating an environment variable, environment file for me within this project directory. Now, once all the initial setup is done, we are going to jump into building some tables. So I'm also going to work on a personal financing, personal banking app. So I'm telling Kiro here to create all the tables that you need in order to build a personal banking app. And Kiro is able to understand all the best practices to build tables, best security practices when it comes to Superbase, and incorporate all that in here. So it has created the tables. It has created all the necessary security safeguards to make sure we create a nice and safe banking app. Now, one of the Kiro powers that we're shipping is this security check. It's part of the Superbase core feature, and what it allows you to do is it's able to take in all the best security practices and make sure all the tables and various configurations are following those security best practices. I'm going to go ahead and run it, and it actually found some problems. So Kiro is able to quickly fix that up by running another SQL statement. Now, another favorite thing about Superbase, another favorite thing of mine about Superbase is that it can generate TypeScript types that matches your table schema. And Kiro's doing that for me without me having to tell it to generate all these TypeScript types. It's able to understand that we're working in a TypeScript environment, and Superbase has this TypeScript generation feature, and we should probably generate some TypeScript types. And there you go. Kiro has created the TypeScript types and now installing the Superbase JavaScript client library. So generating all these TypeScript types, installing the Superbase client libraries, these are standard practices that we follow. And Kiro's able to do that without me having to interfere with any of the prompts. It understands all these best practices that it needs to do in order to get started with a Superbase project. Now finally, once all the tables are created, all the configuration is set, Kiro's generating all the database migrations. And after a while, let's check out the migration file that I created. So you can see Kiro has created a nice accounts table for us with all the columns that you would need for our personal banking apps, like user ID, account type, balance, currencies. It also generated other tables too, like budgets, categories, transactions, all the tables that you would expect in a personal banking app. And you can view that within the Superbase dashboard. You can see the transaction tables, budgets tables, all being associated to the auth user ID table. So it has taken all the best practices that Superbase offers and put it all together. Now let's come back to Kiro and keep going. So it's now generating some front-end code to connect to our Superbase database. This is a TypeScript type that I mentioned earlier. And as you can see, we have all the matching TypeScript type that matches the table schema. Now let's go ahead and create a new chat session and work on the UI. So the prompt here that I'm giving it is basically saying, hey, I have these tables in my Superbase project. Please create a UI that matches what I have in the tables. This is one of the neat tricks that I like to work on. This is one of the neat tricks that I like to use when building apps using Superbase and large language models. I like to start from the tables. And then once I'm done with the tables, I have it generate the UI. Because having a nice airtight table structure is very important. And once all the tables in place, LLMs are generally really good at understanding what's going on and figuring out the best UI that goes with those tables. So Kiro is analyzing all the schema that we generated and is generating all these UI code to display what we saw in the database on the front-end code. And just like that, we have some nice set of front-end code. Let's run the local dev server and check it out. So the UI looks good. It looks like a personal banking app, but we don't see any data, right? Well, that's because we just created the tables, but we haven't inserted any data into it, obviously. So let's go back and ask Kiro to add some dummy data into the database. And Kiro, again, is able to figure out how to insert dummy data into Supabase, what the best practice is. And it's running some SQL command to insert some dummy data into all the tables that we created earlier. And after inserting all these data in 4 different tables, it double checks that all the data has been inserted. And then I've asked Kiro to create a local seed file to keep all these dummy data persisted within this project. Looks great. Let's go ahead and check it out. Now, within the Supabase table, we had those dummy data, but it looked like we haven't signed in to the app yet. So I'm asking Kiro to add authentication to the app. And Kiro's able to figure out the structure of the Supabase project. The fact that obviously the passwords are encrypted, so you wouldn't be able to insert just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 into the passwords column. You need to properly encrypt or hash the passwords. It's able to figure out how Supabase does it and able to do that. It's able to self-correct it. So on the first shot, we missed it, but I've gone ahead and asked Kiro to make some fixes. And it's on its own was able to figure out that, okay, the Supabase local dev server needs to relaunch. So without me telling it, Kiro's stopping the Supabase local dev server, relaunching it, loading in all the seed data that we created again, and resetting the scene so that the proper authenticated user is created within the database. And so far, I have done minimal staging. It's all the Kiro's staging file that's doing all the heavy lifting. And with some edits from Kiro, we are able to sign into the app. And as you can see, you can view all the dummy data that Kiro created in this nicely authenticated, proper personal banking app. So that was Kiro Power from Supabase. Again, we have the local version and hosted version. And I hope you liked what you see, and I cannot wait to see what you build with it. Thank you so much.
Thank you again, Harry and Tyler. That was really great. We really appreciate both of you coming here and talking about the powers. And both powers are super useful. I've been using both of them for my own application development. So I've really benefited from actually learning a lot about Postman and Supabase over this last month. Cool. So what's next? There's a lot of questions. I think availability in the CLI. We want to actually we have a Kiro CLI if you don't know. We also want to make it available more broadly. More use cases, more partners. We have on our website, we have a way for you to submit a form and actually send us powers, and we're reviewing them weekly. And if we find interesting ones, we can curate them. You can do it as an individual as well, by the way. It doesn't have to be your organization. If you have a specific use case that you want to highlight, and it meets our bar for adding him on, we're happy to do it. I think organizational use cases are going to be a big one. So being able to govern like powers around what powers teams can install is going to be another feature that we add. And I think our goal here is really for Kiro. The Kiro agent has powers, And over time, like a Kiro agent should be able to discover powers and say, hey, you're trying to do this. I know there's a power to solve this problem, without the user actually having to like explicitly go and say anything. Yeah, so as we said, you can go ahead and start using it right away on Kiro. And thank you so much again, everyone, for taking your time. I appreciate everyone joining at 4 p.m. And I'm happy to take questions. If you have questions, happy to if you come up and we can take questions. Thanks again.